Oh, what the fuck am I doing all the way over there? Hi. Welcome to the stream. Well, that was fucking weird. Why the fuck was I over there? Yeah, hi. Welcome everybody. We are live with something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now, right? So ever since I played enough of Subnautica Below Zero, um I've been talking about wanting to representation on the topic because at some point within Subnautica Below Zero, I was able to tell that it was pretty bad. That pretty much everything that I loved about the original was gone, and that it's basically a puppet. It's basically what is the movie, like Weekend at Bernie's or something like that? It's basically getting weekend by Bernie's by like unknown worlds entertainment. Like puppeteered in front of us to make us believe that it's still Subnautica, while not really being able to like do too much in terms of like what the fuck Subnautica even is. And I'm a person that thinks a lot about things, mostly because I have nothing to do all most of the day other than work out and think about things, and I need to think about things a lot because my brain is incredibly tiny. So I over but can you go deeper? Actually, no. Like the world map is both smaller in scale, in terms of like how far out you can go, as well as in how deep you can go, and also in terms of how high you can go as well, because I don't think you can really climb up anywhere. So really, it's a lot smaller, a lot more compact, and yet while being more compact, it doesn't really do anything with it. It's a similar feeling. So for the people that played Saints Row, right? Well, like for the people that say played Saints Row, if you go from playing Saints Row 2 or 3 and then go into playing Saints Row A Gat Out of Hell, right? It's like the same packaging, right? It's like it seems to tell you that it's still the same packaging, but the game is much more compact, but also completely different and a million fucking times worse. It's actually incredible, and this was the reason why I really wanted to do this presentation, because I wanted to like put into words why exactly Unknown Worlds failed this hard. And I've talked about a lot of these points like over the course of streams before, so like you might be able to recognize some of them again from me mentioning them before. But I've put together like a little script. I've put together a very concise, I guess, PowerPoint presentation. And yeah, let me just rearrange my keyboard and my microphone. All right, there we go. Okay, and I got my script page here. So let's go straight into that. Why don't we? All right. What? What? Okay, there's this presentation. Where the fuck am I? Um. What? Um. I'm not even on the screen anymore. Um. Yeah, crouching bug hidden idiot. Um. What? Um. I the true Uniprop experience. Okay, let me remove the capture real quick. All right, I'm gonna remove that. Okay. And let me just actually, one second. I'm gonna go into studio mode real quick. Alrighty, and we're just gonna. Huh? Wait, what? Wait, what? Uh, I um. I am fairly confused. Let me just try some things out. Let me just try some things out. We're just gonna, you know what, smooth moves. Um, hell yeah, like wouldn't be one of my streams if I didn't, if technology didn't just shit in my face from the get-go, wouldn't it? Okay, there we go. And transparency. All right. And YouTube Studio. There we go. Hi. Hello. No, wait. Fuck. Yes. All right. Hi. There we go. I have no legs. I have no hands. This is quite normal. I promise you, this is quite normal. I'm just gonna be over here, make myself a little bit larger, tiny bit larger. All right. There we go. Whew. All right. That was fucking weird. All right. Let me just bring up everything right. Okay. All right. So, without further ado, let's get started on how to completely fuck up your sequel, or alternative title, some weird fucking bug screams about Subnautica for like an hour. And I want to preface this with, this is all my opinion. Like, this is all my opinion based on my observations. This is extremely subjective. I'm not gonna say that I'm like the leading the leading authority on like all things game design, right? This is all my opinion. So before anybody says like, oh, but how can you defend this point in the face of fucking constructivist like ideology? I don't fucking know. I'm stupid. This is all just my stupid thoughts. So the thing is, Subnautica as the game, like Subnautica, the first one, is near and dear to my heart. Beating it was, as stupid as it sounds, a huge personal challenge to me because I'm deathly afraid of any large body of water. This like anything deeper than a puddle is enough to give me a fucking panic attack. And this is so bad that it extends into video games. Like, if there's a sufficiently large body of water in the video game, it just messes me up. I'm just fucking terrified. I cannot go into it. So like, getting through that, it was quite a challenge, and I really did feel accomplished whenever I managed to beat it for the first time, whenever I managed to see the credits for the first time. And I didn't like do it in like with God mode enabled. No, like I played in proper survival mode because that's the way it's supposed to be played. It's supposed to play the goddamn game. The thing with Subnautica is that it was a standout hit in the genre, despite a lot of things. So it came out, or like it entered early access during a time where open world survival crafting early access games were completely flooding the market, even more than they are nowadays. And it did have a lot of shortcomings. It did have a lot of bugs. It did have a lot of it really did have a lack of optimization. So, which again was very much a hallmark of the genre at the time, it still is today. But it also had numerous qualities that made it stand out among its peers at the time. It had a fixed map, so the map, except for some very minor variations, the map would always be the same, and important things would always spawn in the same place. It had a coherent story. It wasn't just like run around and survive however long you can in this weird wacky world. It had a story. It had a beginning. It had an end. The progression of the player was more or less planned, so you can go at different aspects of the game in different manners. But generally, the core progression is somewhat planned out. And yeah, that just made it really stand out among like all the other games that came out at the time, that basically like through randomization at every aspect of the game in the hopes of being able to recapture the lightning in a ball, or like the huge success that Minecraft managed to like have. Because like, let's face it, like Minecraft is at the core of this. Like, most of these like survival games were trying to emulate Minecraft, because before that point the survival genre was obviously existent, but it was very much like in need of recovery. So this being said, it being like a standout hit, it being like very near and dear to my heart, I was overjoyed whenever they announced the sequel. Many other people were also overjoyed with this, but then they also said that it was gonna also go through early access. And that stumped a lot of people, because the first Subnautica was developed by the studio that had some okay success before with certain things like Natural Selection, but Subnautica made them an absolute fuckload of money. So people were rightfully wondering, hey, why the fuck would you do early access? Thank you so much for the Oh my god, it's the two series. So thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate that. I hope you enjoy your Ogalib, your continued Ogalib privileges. Oh, that being said, talking about emotes, the Caleb Pog emote is now live. Um, so the early access, what are we doing? We're having a presentation on the topic of why Subnautica Below Zero is an absolutely horrible sequel. So people were wondering, why would you go into early access? You made an ass out of, oh, Robert is flexing his golden Ogalip. People were wondering, why are you going for early access again? Which is like, supposed to be a way for fledgling developers, like, to try and even get a game to completion. Why are you going through that again, even though you've made like an astounding amount of money? You had incredible success with the first one, and like you're not even gonna use any of your resources for the first one because all the bugs, all the lacking optimization that Subnautica still has are probably never gonna get addressed anymore because they've completely abandoned working on the game, like except for very, very minor updates or like that really completely break the game. So their explanation, their argument for this was that, and I quote, the experience of instant community feedback was integral to the development of the original Subnautica. Which is fine, I guess. It kind of makes it sound like they don't really have much of much trust in themselves, but you know what? I guess it's fine. However, over the course of the presentation, I will try to explain why, in my opinion, this argument was absolute bullshit, and I will base this conclusion on nothing else but their own actions during the early access, progress. No, yeah, the project, whatever. Yeah, you know what I mean. So we save money on QA, kind of, yeah. So, to explore the shortcomings of the second game, we gotta look at what made the original Subnautica what made the original as good as it was. And after I played through it more times than I'm willing to admit, I kind of came to the conclusion / like 3 specific aspects crystallized themselves out, and like I like to call those the 3 pillars of like the game. Those pillars being the freedom of exploration, the sound design, and the aspect of isolation. I think these are by far the key aspects of everything else within Subnautica bases itself off of. Like the entire experience of Subnautica is based off of these 3 core ideas. So we're going to look at these one by one, and we're going to look at how Below Zero decided to handle these. So, freedom of exploration. How did Subnautica do it? You are dropped in the safe shallows. You have no waypoints. You have no landmark, except for the Aurora, which you will soon learn that which you will soon learn to associate with fear. You need to survive, but you have no idea where to go. The only thing that we really have to like guide you right now is your character's basic needs. Your character has health, which you can heal with medkits, which you can get in your life pod. But you still have hunger and water. You start out with a couple bottles of water and a couple like dry nutrition bars. However, those are gonna run out. Luckily, the safe shallows do sport quite the overabundance of wildlife, like wildlife that is not a threat to you. So you can go out there and fish and filter water and disinfect all kinds of water and desalinate water, and you can grill the fish and you can cure the fish and everything. Fine, no problem. The thing is, over time, you will notice that you have to swim farther and further for fish because the natural spawn rate of the fish in the air, of the fish, will not be able to keep up with the degradation of your health, of your food and thirst bar. The thing is, the safe shallows is, speaking from the terrain perspective, a local maximum of height, meaning that from any point from the safe shallows, from any point, any direction you go, will be down. So already, without the use of any waypoints, by only using the basic systems that you as a player are already familiar with, the game has already taught you that you need to go deeper. The game doesn't need to tell you to go deeper. It already lets you know you have to go further and further out. And you have to go, the further you go out, the deeper you go. Organically, like this, without telling you to go anywhere. It has told you that the only way out of this hellhole is to descend. Your only other options are to starve or to die of thirst. It gives you ample time to learn the systems. It lets you slowly, it slowly teaches you the crafting, it slowly teaches you the scanning, everything that you will need. But it also teaches you over time that food will not always come swimming to your front door. At some point, the game does introduce waypoints by the way of the radio transmission that you can find. However, those are mainly used for further world building and to give you a couple new blueprints. Those blueprints you can usually find in other places, and you can usually find them in other places a lot quicker than in those other life pods you could find. So even then, yes, they're nice, but they are by far not necessary, and B, they're not the most efficient way to go about things. There is one specific exception to this, because usually they're not necessary for furthering the progress in the game. But there is one ingenious use for endgame progression, and that is the life pod number 2 of Chief Technical Officer U. The endgame progression can be started with just this singular waypoint. The life pod of CTOU is located near a giant arch in the Blood Kelp zone, being up here. When you are at this life pod and you look around, you will see a giant arch that coming out of the ground. At this point, the game will have taught you that caves usually hide pretty good things. Like if you see a cave, it's probably a good idea to go in there, because when in doubt, there's gonna be some spicy stuff there. So what do? You explore it, okay? You go through this place here. There's some dangers, yes, but if you skirt, as you come in here, and if you skirt along this wall, they now know how to graph stuff. I mean, yeah. So if like this is like already like a really good design for you. So you come into this cave here. On this side of the cave, there's a giant pissed off Leviathan. If you're on this side of the cave, it will never see you. You will be outside of its aggro radius. If you go over here, it will aggro. Therefore, the game is already teaching you, hey, if you just want to explore, and for some reason you don't have the equipment needed to kill a Leviathan yet, just go along here, which will lead you to a giant waterfall, like underwater, like saline waterfall. You will go down here, and you will find yourself in the big central point of the area of the Lost River. And as you can tell, the Lost River, unlike the entire rest of the map, is a cavernous system, and it's fairly linear. Here, you will find alien architecture, which will string you along like breadcrumbs to the primary research facility here. In here, you can find documents which will tell you that there's two more important structures on this planet: the lava castle for energy production and the primary containment facility. You learn this from text documents. From Simple Apply from first early on. Yeah, it's like it happens very well if people don't understand that if people are just completely refusing to explore, which is like the wonderful thing. It's like either you explore or you're just like you're gonna fucking die. Like the game tells you to do it without explicitly telling you. So you now know that there's two more structures at 1,000 meters depth and 1,400 meters depth. There's two, like, depending on which way you came, like, which is going to be any of these access points here, but most likely given the proximity to the CTOU life pod is still be here, you will probably also have explored this part here, because it's completely safe, and you will have seen that it goes even deeper here. Therefore, you can gauge that whatever is even deeper down is Well, through this tunnel here, and you go down there and you get to the inactive lava zone, you get to the active lava zone, you get to the lava castle, you get to the primary containment facility, which in turn is where basically all of the end game progression happens, which is like where you meet the Sea Emperor, Leviathan, and all that stuff. So, effectively, by use of only one waypoint, meaning the CTOU waypoint here, the game has, only by use of good level design and good placement of information, led you along to the end of the game without needing any more waypoints. They made you go deeper and deeper by way of the carefully placed spawn rates. They made you go deeper and deeper into this area by use of carefully placed enemy design or just level design. They made you discover this area. They made you discover the primary research facility because you literally see like a row of alien structures going to it, and they then by way of the level design told you that there's only two ways down, and those are the only ways to reach the aforementioned places at 1,000 and 1,400 meters depth. And just like that, with use of one single waypoint, the game has managed to organically lead you towards the complete end of the game. Wait a second, where was I? Right, and even then, because they do give you a waypoint, even then, as you can see, it's not entirely necessary that you do it this way, because there's multiple other entrance points that you can organically find, which will also lead you to the same places, to the same gameplay progression, by way of the placement of the primary research facility, because is this place here is called Lost River Junction for a purpose. Like, this is the junction of all the other Lost River caves. So even then, even this one waypoint that does kind of string you along isn't entirely necessary, because just finding your way into this place once can be enough to already give you information to string you along to the end of the game. Now, I hope I managed to properly explain just how genius this is, because this is easily the latter half of the game. This is easily the entire later half of the game, just like slowly exploring this place and getting the technology to go deeper and deeper into the place until you can finally reach the primary containment facility where the Sea Emperor Leviathan is. Now, how did they fuck it up? As a point of admission, the waypoint system that is found in Below Zero is not the worst that it's ever been. During the lengthy early access process, one major change was concerning the conduct by the developers was the complete overhaul of the early game. For the longest time, the early access versions of the games had a tutorial section that was beyond linear. Many people would rightfully describe it as being a railroad that would not let you explore anything for roughly the first 1 to 2 hours of gameplay. That would not let you explore anything for the first couple hours of play. Not only is this in stark contrast to the very open nature of the original Subnautica, it's also in stark contrast to what one would expect from a survival game early game section. Survival games work off of the fact that, unlike many other games, you're cast in a situation where you're very much at the bottom of the food chain. You're not a chosen one, you're nothing special. You're in an area, and the things in that area will eat you if you're not careful. This is usually rectified as the player progresses and not only gains access to new technologies or new tools, but also begins to understand how the mechanics of the game or the world that they find themselves in work. You're at your most vulnerable and the most out of place at the beginning of the game, when your knowledge of what to expect is pretty much at zero. This is where a player will most likely encounter some of the more memorable aspects of the game that will stay with them, because at this point everything is still new and a challenge. The game is fresh and can leave an impression on them. This is where the survival aspect of the survival game can and should be felt the most before you become self-sufficient. And Below Zero effectively squanders this prime real estate of game design. Instead of filling the first 2-ish hours of the game with challenges for the player to overcome, they filled it with a story dump and a railroad progression that would chastise you for trying to explore. To be fair, again, this was changed in the final release of the game. However, it does need to be mentioned that it took them quite a while to change this. The developers were very unwilling to change this part of the game for most of the early access development cycle. You might remember you may remember what I said at the start of the presentation, that the argument was that the experience of instant community feedback played an integral role in the development of the original Subnautica. So given that statement, it comes as a surprise that it took the developers the better part of the entire early access duration to change the beginning part of the game, and this could just be chalked up to the developers wanting to experiment and simply wanting to see where it would lead them in the development process. However, I believe that this was the earliest symptom of the developers simply not understanding what made the original Subnautica good, due to the way the rest of Below Zero treats progression. There is a massive over-reliance on waypoints. Natural progression takes a backseat, and you are no longer expected to navigate your way through different biomes. Instead, you'll be told exactly where to go for story-critical items or technology at a fairly regular interval that may or may not be time-based. But it's kind of a story game. It really isn't, because the story's bad. Where was I? Right. There are, however, exceptions to this. Both the act of finding Marguerite space, with Marguerite being a character in the game, as well as using the map of the area to find different Altera outposts, are largely dependent on the game giving you one waypoint and you being expected to figure out the rest of the way by use of your compass, landmarks, or logical deduction as to which route would be most sensible in specific vehicles. For example, this is what I'm talking about. You are being given the location of the Delta place. However, all the other places, you have to figure out yourself. You have to make yourself you have to make a compass. You have to like navigate your way, and even then you have to find your way to the different places, right? Nobody tells you where Rho is. Nobody tells you that Rho is in a fucking hole in the ground. Nobody tells you have to go basically in an underwater route to get to Sector 0. Nobody tells you that basically Omega is in a floating piece of rock. Nobody tells you all the bullshit you have to get through just to get to Station 5. Wait, is that a Rho? Fuck. I think that's not a Rho. I can't remember which one it is. Fuck, whatever. The thing is, that entire half of the game is completely optional. You don't have to find out what happened to your sister. You don't have to meet Marguerite. You don't have to find any of the other Altera outposts. Although, the technology that you will find there would certainly help you in the main quest. The only mandatory aspect of the game is to build a body for the friendly voice in your head that will quickly start to give you a migraine after you, quote-unquote, acquire it. Said friendly voice will give you the aforementioned semi-regular waypoints to the technologies that you have to acquire to finish the game. These waypoints will lead you to practically every single biome in the game, and as such completely eliminate the need for organic progression. The waypoints are set up in a way that, for example, you start out in this area here. If the waypoint is over here, and you go from this starting area to the waypoint, you will, and this waypoint, for this example here, is deeper. You will on this route come along a cavernous system that, if you go from this side to this side, will lead you deeper and deeper to the waypoint. You don't have to explore this area to find the way down. No, you just go there and you go down the first area that seems to go deeper, and you follow this until you get to the waypoint and you find the technology that is marked for you. Every single mission critical piece of information or technology is delivered to you this way. There's absolutely no challenge. You go in a straight line and you basically get there with no problem. The only Yeah, the only mandatory the only mandatory aspect of the game is to find those pieces of technology. So the only mandatory aspects really are completely railroaded. Again, this is in stark contrast to how the original Subnautica handles the progression, where stringing you along to the early game was very much something that was expected to happen organically or just by use of limited information that you were given. It's almost as if the developers thought that the actual game was simply an annoying side objective that they had to cram their narrative into, which they were clearly proud of given the focus. But whether or not that's something they should be proud of is a different question. Gone is the carefully crafted world that forces you ever deeper into the ocean without necessarily telling you to go deeper. Instead, it has been replaced by a map that's beyond bountiful in resources, and that poses no challenge to you, whether those resources are building materials, food, water, or massive dumps of technological advances. Additionally, you don't even have a reason to go out and forage for materials anymore, since there's an entire species in the game solely focused on swimming up to you and giving you raw materials by literally presenting them in front of you. Gone is the age we would have to feed giant fish that would just as easily take bite out of you as anything you would offer them in an attempt to domesticate them, since they had the habit of bringing you basic scrap. Now you have little alien mermaids that are mischievous at best during the early game, and they completely lose any semblance of quote-unquote hostility by the time you're a few hours into the game. I hope this illustrates the major difference in game design and game progression between the original and the sequel. The freedom of exploration was restored to a degree. You aren't being chastised for trying to explore early in the game anymore. But everything that was beyond that still relies on the same overabundance of waypoints that basically want you to go in a straight line to that thing. Don't take any detours, don't do anything, just go there, collect the parts, and fuck off again. Now, I want to look at something a little bit different, and this is going to be even more subjective than the rest of the presentation. Music, sound design. Because the thing you have to understand is that I have an incredibly small brain. Here's some samples to support my bias, and I have no idea what the fuck these design ideas PowerPoint is giving me. For the ambient music, I took the track for the first section of the game, both for Subnautica and Below Zero. And what I want to showcase is that Subnautica 1, or the first Subnautica, managed to have you immersed with ambient music. The ambient music was a huge part of you feeling in the experience, you being immersed, you being in that place. Whereas the sound design in the Below Zero constantly takes you out of it. Making ambient music is a challenge that I can't really get into because I know nothing about music. But I hope that with these two examples, I can kind of illustrate what I meant. Anyways, here's the OST for Subnautica's first area. And thank you for the resub your stuff here, I really appreciate it. You gonna start? Are you gonna... There we go. What? Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try this again. Thanks for stopping while you're stepping. Really appreciate that. All right, that's about it. There is a swelling of sound. There is a more active part of the sound, but in general, there's still an echo to it. There's still a depth and echo to it that makes you understand just like the vastness of the body of water that you are now in. Again, this is after you go yeah, it's thinking music kind of. This is after you go into the water for the first time and you look around and you see nothing around you. You see floor below you, and then you see in the distance that it goes ever deeper from wherever you are. This is music that makes you understand that you're just at the top of it all. That's a lot. Well, yeah. This is music to make you understand that this is very much the tip of the iceberg, and there is so much more. Just like you can keep hearing just again hear something very clear and close as like a bass, like the basses, but then as the sound swells and you understand the situation that you're in, the music goes louder and deeper to really hammer home the point of the depth, not of the planet where you're currently in. Anyways, let's see how Subnautica Below Zero handles this. All right. Reminds me of a game I can't think of. So like the important thing is like you can clearly tell us why it's shit game. Oh, I will. So the general idea that they're going for, like with the yeah, it's like not it's a nice piece of music, and like the beginning is very good because like the beginning, like with the what is it called, like it's a kalimba, I've heard somebody call it glockenspiel, so I've heard people call it kalimba, whatever, I don't know which one, I don't know music, and it's very like it makes you understand like the way the sound design works, like it's good, it sounds like it makes you sound of like icicles hitting a surface, It has no consistent idea behind it. Like that's the thing. At the beginning, it does. It makes you sound. It makes you think of like icicles hitting like an icy surface, icicles falling into the water, something freezing. I can see. I have a picture. I have a picture. Like the music paints a picture in my head, and that's perfect. But then it inexplicably gets louder. Then for some fucking reason, it gets way too busy. They have a good idea, but that clearly isn't enough for them. Like a simple good idea wasn't good enough for them in that regard. They wanted more. They wanted something better. They wanted it to carry more than it has to carry. They make the music being important. They make the music more important than the ambience that the music is supposed to build up. And in such a way, the soundtrack of Below Zero fucking misses the point of being ambient sounds. They are there to, as the name implies, build the ambience. Again, you might say that I just like cherry picked, right? I decided to just take the soundtrack, the OSTs for the first areas in either game. If you want to look at for the entire OST, that's entirely fine. Again, I said it before. These are just some samples to to confirm my own biases. Because I'm trying. River sounds nice. Sounds like ice, but then it gets far too busy. Yeah, like they put too much in there for no other purpose than having more things in there, and I think that is a pretty good mirror to like the problem really, because like whereas the first game with the story, the story was pretty okay, like it was serviceable, but it was very much in the background, right? It was there, but it was backward. It like supported everything nice enough, but it wasn't overbearing. Much like the ambient music was there. It wasn't overbearing. It was supporting. Everything meshed together in a good experience. However, here they have the game aspect, but the story is completely overbearing. Just like the music, they have all the different parts of the game don't want to meld into an experience anymore. All the different parts of the game want to be stand out among each other, which is where they go completely wrong in terms of game design. Taking out of models the entirety of the purpose of a piece. Yeah, like I guess so. I don't know nothing about music. So yeah, I hope that this made it clear. I hope that put it into good enough words so that explain what my problem with the music design is. Now you remember the last aspect I talked about, which is the third of the so-called three pillars to make the original Subnautica such a standout experience. The third pillar I had mentioned was something I had dubbed the feeling of isolation. Yeah, isolation in Subnautica. Throughout isolated exploration of Beak Water, I wanted like original Ramirez doing railroading at work, pretty much. Yeah, that's sort of what it boils down to. Also, why is my model stuck? Hello? Hello? Alright, there we go. Doxed. Alright. So, throughout the entirety of Subnautica, you never meet another person. You see signs that people people were there, and you see signs that they were violently removed from wherever there is. It isn't until the end of the game that you meet another living being that talks to you, and even then your acquaintanceship with that living thing quickly comes to an end when it's heavily suggested the Sea Emperor was going to die soon after your dealings with it were over. So what do you have beyond that to keep you, again, quote-unquote, company? You have the cuttlefish, which seems as if it was designed to be the perfect pet and mascot. And you have stalkers, which I mentioned before, you can domesticate to a degree, though your partnership is a very uneasy one, since they can still decide that you're too tasty of a snack to pass up. There is one more conversational partner, quote unquote, that keeps you company. Your PDA is the first thing you hear in the game. It's the last thing you hear in the game. It tells you that it's booted up, and by the end of the game, it tells you just how much money you owe Alterra. The PDA starts out as little more than a reliable reminder in terms of having to return to the surface, having to eat, drink. But over time, this female voice develops a sort of personality. She doesn't necessarily take joy in your hardships, but most of her comments can be viewed as poking fun at your less than ideal situation. Something like, there's a large amount of Leviathan class organisms detected in this area. Are you sure that whatever you're doing here is worth it? Over time, you get immersed in the experience of your PDA being your only companion on your adventure. And this immersion is deliberately pulled away from you when your PDA releases one specific message.
After weeks without human contact, it is normal to experience psychological discomfort. Research indicates symptoms may be partly alleviated by adopting a pet or anthropomorphizing an inanimate object.
This voice line alone puts focus on the fact that you have been imposing a personality on a couple of pre-recorded voice lines. It went beyond characterizing your player character and instead served to demonstrate how you as the player are immersed in the game. That you as the player have started to put a personality, anthropomorphizing an inanimate object, because your human brain is seeking contact even in the concept of being on an alien world in a video game. They deliberately break this immersion to make you realize the depth of immersion that you've already been in by way of forcing you into some internal reflection. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. They knew how immersed you would be at some point by the time that you get this voice line. So they immediately just hold a mirror in front of you and let you understand just how immersed you are. They pull the rug out from under you with one simple voice line. This would not be possible if there were any other characters or voices to overpower the impact of your PDA speaking to you. You wouldn't have to impose a personality on your PDA if you had other people to talk to. It would be just a menu popping up. But instead, the PDA becomes a character, much like the Sea Emperor Leviathan over time. So, how does Below Zero handle the aspect of isolation on an alien world? In short, you never have a silent fucking moment. For starters, there's not a human being on the planet. You can visit her whenever you want after a certain point of the game. You can become best friends with her. She might even give you special access to her greenhouse. Isn't that nice? Additionally, there's the aforementioned voice in your head, which isn't human, but is very much a constant character. I say character, but this would be a disservice to actual characters. The PDA, which is nothing but pre-recorded voice lines, is more of a character than the alien Alan. Alan serves two purposes in Below Zero. He gives you all the waypoints towards the mission-critical pieces of technology, and he serves as an excuse to show us just how human, quote-unquote, Robin is supposed to be. Alan doesn't understand humanity because he's from a civilization that is effectively a hive mind. And as such, it's Robin's task to explain concepts such as individuality in the most infuriatingly simple ways possible. He is an excuse for Robin to deliver sermon after sermon of dialogue that have the feel of a 14-year-old's essay who's trying his hardest to sound incredibly smart by throwing terms that he barely understands at it. And of course, because Alan isn't supposed to be a conversational partner, he's supposed to be, a gateway for this, he doesn't really argue. He just accepts whatever Robin says. He doesn't question anything. He doesn't force her. He doesn't force her to have some internal reflection. We can't even get we are no longer the character. We are being given a character. But even then, they don't do anything interesting with that character. And of course, as a character, there is Robin herself. Because you are playing a character. The original's player character was little more than a husk that you would project yourself onto. But Robin really wants us to know how smart and special she is. The developers want us to know that this isn't our adventure. This isn't your adventure. This isn't your fight for survival. This isn't your feeling of wonder when you find something interesting, something beautiful. No, this is Robin's adventure. And how do they let us know? By ruining any sense of immersion one might have or develop with Robin constantly talking. For those of you who watched me play through the game, you might remember that over time, I started being able to predict whenever Robin would open her dumb fucking mouth. Because whenever I felt the slightest sense of immersion or wonder, or I was interested in something that I had just seen, the game would immediately tell me what to think instead, and not give me any chance to really take in whatever I had just discovered. And it may come as a surprise to you, but this is actually the improved version of the game. Because in the original, again, it took them quite a while to replace this part in the early access process. In the original, not only did you have Robin constantly talk, not only did you have Alan constantly talk, no, you also had your sister, still very much alive, in an orbital station above you, as well as your supervisor, and you had all those people talk to each other in a manner that you can barely even describe as human. There's one specific piece of dialogue I remember from the early access version, in which you're introduced to the character of Sam, Robin's sister, and they want us to know that they're twins, right? So how do they do this? Do they show us a family picture of the two of them next to each other, and then show us a scene of Robin in the mirror, so we can say, oh, there's two of them, there's twins in this family. Oh, she's one of the twins. Therefore, the sister that we're talking to is her twin sister. No, what we got was Sam being a hard ass towards Robin, and Robin dropping one of the least human lines in a video game I've ever heard. She says, in that quote, "Do you really have to be this way to me at work? We shared a womb, Now, might be that it's because I don't really talk to a lot of people. But I don't think real people talk like that. Might be because I don't fucking go out much, and I'm just living in my basement. But I'm fairly certain real people do not talk like that. And of course, if they don't exchange dialogue in a way that makes you question your fucking sanity, they exchange horrible fucking quips about whatever you just found. Because again, how dare you wanna, think about things yourself? How dare you want to experience something yourself? How dare you want to process something? No. And again, they changed this after players demanded it for the longest time of the early access's runtime. But they clearly again misunderstood what the problem was, because the problem wasn't that you had 4 characters in your ear and it would be better with 2 characters in your ear. No, the problem was that you would have characters in your ear at all times at all. Immersion does not work if you're constantly told what to think. And if you're not allowed to make your own observations or discoveries, to be immersed, to feel like you're there. So, what can we say in conclusion? In conclusion, Unknown Worlds Entertainment is a horde of fucking monkeys on coding machine that by nothing but sheer luck managed to create one of my favorite games of all time. They had massive, stark differences in the early access version of the sequel that were in complete contrast to the first game. And not only, this wasn't an experimentational part, because as well just them being experimentational or something like that. They really wanted this to be the case. And even when players told them for months and months and months and months on end that this was a problem, that they didn't like this, and they finally changed it, they only changed it at the surface level while still leaving the core problem in the game. They changed it without addressing any of the core problems, and they were still so incredibly proud of, it seems. So I hope that, because this is the last slide, I hope that this explains why I believe that they truly do not understand. They've already paid for voice actors, can't waste it, I guess. So I hope that I managed to more or less succinctly explain why I believe that they truly do not understand what made the original good. Again and again, at every choice, at every crossroads in the game's development, they went with a decision that goes completely counter to the original in a way that it's almost insane that it wasn't like made to be a deliberate parody of the first game. It feels like a parody. It feels like it feels like a parody of the original Subnautica. It feels like a cheap knockoff. And yeah, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that if Unknown Worlds makes another Subnautica game, it's gonna suffer from the same problems again, or maybe more, because if the entire fan base screaming at them for the entirety of an early access is like, duration doesn't give them the community feedback, as they call it, that they need to understand what the fuck they're doing wrong, then I don't know what else could make them understand what is going wrong. That's it. And then there's silence. I hope it's as I said, it is a bit of a shorter presentation, yeah, but like I said, I didn't want to go into like the history of the entire game. Just like, I didn't want to go into the history of the entire game. I just wanted to wanted to go over over like the stark differences like that made me think about that they made me think that they never really intended for the game, like that they never really that they never really understood what made the original so good. You're pretty good. Thank you.